Welcome to our very first of a webinar series, which we are calling Tenant Tuesdays. I'm Tracy Resvani. I'm with the Howard County Office of Consumer Protection, and today we are hosting Bob Francis, and I think I'm probably going off of the script here, so I'll apologize. But for those who don't know us, we are part of the 4 agencies in Howard County who have a role to play in the landlord-tenant environment. And so what we do mainly is we handle a lot of the disputes, whether it's landlord-tenant or consumer and merchant. We answer the phone if you have questions about your rights and your responsibilities. We meet with you in person, no appointments required. We handle a lot of calls as well as emails and the occasional letter or fax that comes in as well. We do enforce the county's landlord-tenant laws that are entrusted to us. And as I said, I am one of 4. We are one of 4 agencies. And we do a lot of community outreach on a myriad of subjects that deal with consumer or landlord-tenant issues. We also license or register peddlers and solicitors. So anyone who's coming to your door in Howard County should have our ID, and if they don't, please let us know. And we also register trespass tow companies as well. So as I mentioned, we are part of the landlord-tenant enforcement scheme, and you can find a link to all of our information on our home page, and that's right there on this slide as well. And as I said off the script, we're hosting Bob Francis, who is the director of the Howard County Department of Inspections, Licenses, and Permits. Because at the very beginning, you need to make sure that you have a legal and safe place to rent if you are a landlord. And obviously, as a tenant, you want to make sure that you have those protections as well. So, of course, we had to start at the very beginning, and that was with Bob. If you're not already registered, we do have a few more events. Later this week, we're doing a program called Car Buying Decoded. We have a subject matter expert that can walk you through the process of shopping for and buying a car, used or new, without all the pitfalls. And the Tenant Tuesday programs continue the rest of the month. So if you haven't registered and are interested, please do so. And Leslie McDonald, who's our outreach and engagement manager, will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions for Bob, please put them in there. And at the appropriate time, Leslie will slide those in. And otherwise, if there's an organic place, we'll deal with them at the very end. She'll also provide you a link to our survey. So we really do appreciate feedback, and if you can. And so, Bob, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and that way you can share your slides.
Okie dokie. Well, let me minimize some things here. Get this over in the right place. Perfect. All right. Can you see me now?
Yep. All good.
All right. Well, as Tracy mentioned, yes, good evening. I'm Bob Francis. I'm the director of the Department of Inspections, Licenses, and Permits. I was originally scheduled for the April 21st slot but I had a conflict, which turns out to not really be a conflict. So they put me here on the 7th, which is the first of the Tenant Tuesdays. But in actuality, as Tracy had mentioned, that's probably really the way we should have gone. Because we're going to talk about human rights and equity. We're going to talk about housing discrimination. We're going to talk about housing and urban community development, the Office of Consumer Protection, all those sort of things. None of that matters until you're actually a rental property. And you can't be a rental property if you don't have a rental license from Howard County. And so we're the first place. Again, we're the Department of Inspections, Licenses, and Permits. Mostly inspections and permits have to do with new construction, building houses, office buildings, warehouses, things of that nature. We permit them, we inspect them. But we do several different licenses, and the largest of all our licenses, of course, is the rental license property. And I'm going to share my screen right here. All right, everybody should be able to see that, right?
Yep.
And Tuesday, Robert Francis, that's me. Let's start off. The Department of Inspections and Licenses and Permits, like most places around the country, we don't write our own codes. We use what's called a model code, and our model codes are written by an organization called the International Code Council. And they publish a whole bunch of what are called model codes. We adopt the International Building Code, the International Residential Code, Plumbing Code, a lot of different ones. And they publish a code called the International Property Maintenance Code. And despite what the title might sound like, the International Code Council is not some sort of secret skull and crossbones international NGO cabal planning to take over the world. In fact, the International Code Council is me, and it's you, and it's the contractors and builders and electricians and manufacturers and people that you deal with all the time. The codes are written through a consensus process, and all these people have a way to provide input into that code making process. Those codes, the codes that the ICC publishes have absolutely no weight or authority whatsoever until a jurisdiction actually adopts them. And under Howard County Code, we adopt the Property Maintenance Code under two titles under the County Code. And if you're taking notes, you might want to write this down. Title 3.700, which is titled appropriately the Property Maintenance Code for Rental Housing, and Title 14.900, which is the Rental Housing Licensing section. Two different sections for two different reasons, and I'll talk a little bit about that just in a second. The Property Maintenance Code was written by the ICC with the intent that it is a way, it is a way to a code, if you will, to basically apply to all buildings, residential, commercial, warehouses, industrial, whatever. It's the basic guidelines, as we say here, the basic standards for equipment, light, ventilation, heating, sanitation for any building. We in Howard County don't adopt it to apply to every building. We don't want to be the HOA, your grass is too tall police on your residential property. If we adopted it that way, we could, but we don't. We adopt it specifically so that it applies to rental properties. And there are different use groups in the building code. The acronym is FISH-BEAMER. Each letter stands for a different type of occupancy, like F for factory, I for institutional, S for storage, B for business, and so on. The ones that we particularly adopt the Property Maintenance Code to be applicable to are residential, and it comes in several subgroups. There's R1, R2, and R3, and I'll tell you what those mean in a minute. And then I1 being institutional, and I'll explain what all those mean in a second. Basically, your R1 is any of your multifamily short-term housing. Think hotels, motels, any short-term place where you rent a room, or even a small apartment or suite, or even an apartment for a short period of time. Those are typically considered R1s. R2 are considered your multifamily residential. Think apartment buildings. Could also be dormitories, things of that nature. But generally, garden-style apartment is an R2. And then R3 is essentially your single-family dwelling. Now, that can be a house sitting in a field in the middle of a lot by itself. It can be an R3, which is attached to another R3, which we commonly call a duplex. It could be attached to two or more R3s in a row, which we basically call townhouses in most cases. And essentially, again, there's your R3. And then your I1 is institutional, which is your assisted living places, generally your smaller assisted living places. 8 people or less are considered residential in nature. You can get larger assisted living places, but basically the I1. I2s are nursing homes and so on. So there we are. It's applicable to R1, R2, R3 with some exceptions I'll talk about, and then I1. So essentially, the code applies to those things, R3, single family dwellings. But there are some exceptions in Title 3.700. The exceptions to R3 is if it's your home and you live there. You don't need a rental license if you live there, okay? If you own the home, you don't live there, but it's occupied by members of your immediate family. There's no definition, excuse me, no specific definition of what immediate family is, but the courts have had some history and some precedents on it. Basically, it's you, your children, maybe your grandparents, aunts and uncles. We start getting into distant cousins and those sort of things. It becomes a little sketchier. We do not do DNA testing. So immediate family is a sort of a general term. We apply it reasonably. So if it's occupied by you, don't need a license. Immediate family, doesn't need to. And if you have what's called a lodger or a boarder, if you have one lodger or boarder, you don't need a rental license. If you have two or more lodgers or boarders, you do need a rental license. Now, when you think lodger and boarder, the example I'll use is let's say you have a townhouse over near the community college and you want to rent a room to a college student who's going to school there. That's fine. You bring that person in, you collect rent from them, they live in your house, they have their own room, but essentially you share the same hallway, the hall bath, the kitchen, the living room. It's all common area to the two of you. You see them in the morning pouring their cereal, eating breakfast before they head out the door. You're living together, but that person is a boarder in your house. If you have one of them, you don't need a rental license. If you have two of those college students, then you do need a rental license. Now, that's not to be confused with, for example, if you have a basement in that townhouse and you have a room set up down there where they've got their own bedroom, their own bathroom, their own hot plate or microwave or whatever it is they need to cook, you lock off the basement door and they have their own door in and out. Even though there's only one person down there, that's not considered a lodger or boarder. That's considered an apartment unit or an accessory dwelling unit, which the county has just passed some additional zoning regulations to deal with what we call ADUs. That's different. That would definitely need a rental license. And in accordance with the county's new zoning or updated zoning regulations, it would also be considered an accessory dwelling unit. So that would absolutely need a license. The code, and again, 3.700 is the property maintenance code that tells you the sort of things you need to do to address basic equipment, light, ventilation, heating, sanitation, fire safety, and so on. Right? 3.700 property maintenance code is going to tell you what you need to do there. So 14.900 is basically the licensing section that says you need to apply for a license, you need to make it applicable in the whole 9 yards. The property maintenance code is also applicable to the common area of condo associations. Most people think of condos and apartments as two separate things. Condo is a type of ownership. You can have a condo-owned townhouse, or you can have a condo-owned apartment building. Most people think of the apartment buildings. An R2 is an apartment building, whether it's town and country and you rent a one-bedroom apartment in the building from town and country, or if it's a condo-owned building and you just happen to own unit 3, that's still considered an R2, and that's an apartment building. What we found a couple years ago is that almost always in a condo building, somebody's renting the unit out. Very seldom do you have every single unit is owner occupied. And we ran into a situation where one of the apartment units was rented. There was a leak in the roof in the top floor apartment, and we cited the tenant, the landlord who owns that particular unit, saying, "Hey, you got to fix this leak." And the landlord said essentially, "Well, I don't own the roof, I just own this apartment." And that's when we realized there was a little bit of a gap in our licensing requirements, where I can license unit 12 because you're renting it out, but we didn't necessarily have licensing authority over the building. So we adopted some changes to Title 14.900 to make it applicable to the common areas of multifamily residential properties. So if you have that apartment type building that's condo owned, we can now go into that building and say, you have to maintain it to certain standards. If there's sprinklers in that apartment building, we can require you to make sure that your sprinklers and your fire alarms are maintained, that the exits are being maintained. I can't necessarily go into units 1, 2, 3, and 4 who aren't rental units and make them do certain things, but the common areas we certainly can. And then, of course, any individual condo apartment unit that's rented, we can also license. So that's sort of the upside of what's required to be licensed. Again, most of the use groups in our building code are not subject to our rental housing code. Business uses, mercantile, warehouses, all those sorts of things. Property maintenance code is not applicable to them, and there's no rental license required on any of that. All right. Oops. Got to get to the right slide. There we go. There's a lot of questions sometimes that comes up as who's responsible for what. Tenants and landlords they're in a partnership. There are certain responsibilities that each party is responsible for. Tenants, of course, are responsible for keeping the interior and exteriors of their properties clean, keeping it sanitary. They have to clean it. You have to take the trash out. You have to provide entry to the inspectors for inspections. Our code says that we have the right of entry at reasonable hours. Generally, we're going to be there sometime between 9:30 in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mondays through Fridays. I don't think anybody would think that that's unreasonable, that we wanted to be there at noon on a Tuesday. If we come knocking on your door at 11:30 on a Saturday night, you should question that. Same thing generally applies to, and Tracy will probably talk about this when she talks about some of the consumer protection issues. But landlords also have to have access to your apartment, but only at reasonable times and with advance notice. And we give folks usually a week or more advance notice before we're coming to a unit to do an inspection. But the tenant has to provide entry for that. When we cite the landlord, for example, who has to make some repairs, we issue a notice of violation to fix those problems, whatnot. You're obligated as a tenant to make sure they have access to their property so they can make repairs. That may seem like common sense to a lot of folks. You'd be surprised. Some tenants don't. And some landlords are actually afraid of their tenants. But the tenants are obligated to provide access for the landlord. Tenants are not allowed to tamper with any of the smoke or carbon monoxide. That's what CO stands for, the carbon monoxide detectors. Tenants are obligated to also report issues to the property owner and management company in a timely manner. We're not mind readers as code officials and inspectors. They're not mind readers as property management people or landlords. You need to make sure you understand that you report what you're doing there and let them know. And lastly, you have to maintain safe and clear means of egress. Most bedrooms are required to have a rescue window so that you can escape from that bedroom directly to the outside. Again, hoarding conditions sometimes play a factor in this as well. Landlords' responsibilities. Landlords are responsible for the bulk of the things that need to be done in a property. They need to maintain the structure, the building, the structures, the garages, fences, some of the major things. Not necessarily cutting the grass, but if there is like drainage issues, they're responsible for fixing that. They have to maintain the property in a sanitary and code compliant condition. Again, I mentioned landscaping and drainage. They're responsible for that, keeping it free from hazardous and unsanitary conditions. They're responsible for the plumbing facilities and fixtures, making sure you have water and drainage and sewer, whether it's on well and septic or whether it's on public water and sewer. The mechanical systems, heating, ventilation, electrical services, those sort of things. Lighting and ventilation also required. I think I'll get into this a little bit later. A lot of questions come up sometimes about air conditioning. Air conditioning is not required by the property maintenance code, but like many things, if it's provided, it's got to be maintained. I went to many schools when I was a younger person that had no air conditioning. So hot summertime, late late fall, early summer when it got really hot, we just open the windows. I did go to one middle school, which at the time we called junior high, by the way. And it didn't have windows, a lot of windows to the outside. It was built with air conditioning. So the expectation is the air conditioning had to work. Whereas the schools that were built without it, there was no expectation for that. Most of the properties we have today have air conditioning, but not all of them. So that's just something to keep in mind. But if air conditioning is provided, central air conditioning is provided, we're going to require you to make that it be operable and maintained. Lighting and ventilation, of course, pest elimination. And this is when it gets a little bit tricky, rodents, roaches, bed bugs. Sometimes the tenants' actions play a part in creating that problem and or preventing it from being adequately abated. Especially bed bugs. We'll go to the landlord and require them to get some testing done, go through remediation, for example. But there may be expectations that the tenants will have to do certain things to make sure that the roaches, or especially bed bugs, don't come back. But primarily, it's going to be the landlord's responsibility to engage pest control professional. And occupancy requirements such as overcrowding and the habitable spaces, they've got to make sure that they don't rent to more people than the spaces can adequately hold. And I got our checkoff list that I'll talk about a little bit at the end to make sure that to give you a little bit of overview about what the square footages look like. As far as, we get that question a lot, is like, how many people can you have in this particular property? And there are ways you measure that square footage wise. Reporting issues, as I mentioned before, tenants can report or should report issues to the property management company through their required reporting system. Do it in a timely manner. You got to give the landlord a reasonable amount of time for the property owner to correct the problem. A lot of times we will get phone calls from folks and they're complaining about a washer that doesn't work or a toilet that's leaking or whatever the issue is. And the first thing we'll ask is have you reported it to the management company? And you'd be surprised how many times that hasn't happened. You need to do it. Most of these companies are going to have some sort of a reporting system where you'll get some sort of a case number or confirmation number, something like that. I would definitely, if you're a tenant, you definitely want to report it through their system, right? But keep track of that number, that case number or management software information they have on that. And I would definitely keep a journal of who you talk to, their name, their phone number, when you talk to them, what they said, what the expected follow-up was, and those sort of things. If you go through all that and the management landlord or the management company hasn't followed up on that, we have our website right here that you can see in our right there, rental housing at howardcountymd.gov. That'll shoot an email to directly to our rental housing folks. And that's the way to basically say, hey, I've been reaching out. I haven't gotten any satisfaction. Can you help? When you do that, we need to make sure you provide some information, right? We need your name, right? And your full address. You can't just say, hey, my name's Bob and I'm from the Bluffs. My apartment's had a leaky toilet for the last 3 months. The Bluffs, what's the building number? We need a building address. We need a unit number. We need your name. We need your contact phone number and email. And give us the nature of the complaint. Provide the details. You don't need to go into the whole history of, the interpersonal struggles that you've had and the problems you've had with folks about, but be specific about the complaint that you're concerned over, including when it was issued, when it was reported to the owner, and provide, again, keep track of their work order number or their management case number or what do they have there, so that we can have that, we can reference that to them when we follow up with them. And also let us know what actions have been taken so far. What have you done? What have they come back with? I had a toilet leak last January 5th. They came out at 1 o'clock in the morning to turn the water off. They came back a week later and they replaced the drywall, but here it is April and my toilet still doesn't work. The water's never been turned back on and the toilet's still not working. Give us those kind of details so that it'll be easier for us to follow up and make sure that we're holding the landlord and the management company to account. Alrighty. let's talk about mold. Howard County, our inspectors, and including the health department, actually, we don't do mold for a couple reasons. First off, we don't know about, we're not trained on it. We don't have the equipment to test for it. The fact of the matter is, neither does the health department. So if you're concerned about, are there mold spores floating around in the air or something like that, you would need to get some other testing done on that. However, mold is usually a result of some sort of a physical property deficiency. And in the picture that you're looking at here, I would venture to guess that this is probably in a basement. And this is probably a subterranean wall in a basement that hasn't been properly waterproofed. And you're getting moisture in through the wall. And moisture will cause the mold. And that's an important thing. Again, we can't address the mold, but we can address the causes of the mold. And we can require the management company to make sure they clean the mold up. A couple of years ago, the Howard County Inspections Office and some other folks were located at what we call the Dorsey Building, where the new Circuit Court building is located. And in the sheriff's area, they actually took some drywall off the wall, and they found this green fuzzy stuff all over the place. And the employees and the administration and the union and everybody was kind of like, oh, we need to get this tested. And one of the people in the county administration who happened to be used to be our risk administrator, risk management administrator, she's like, well, time out. We don't need to spend any money testing on mold. Let's just assume this is mold. Or let's just assume that it's mold and let's repair it. There are very specific things and steps that you need to take to get rid of the mold, cleaning it up and those sort of things. And so that's going to be expected. We're going to expect that this is cleaned up. Whatever the remediation techniques are, usually it's like a bleach. Some molds actually you can't clean with bleach, but make sure you clean it up appropriately. Again, then we'll also make sure what caused the moisture in the first place. And then we're going to make sure that it has to, if you have a leaky basement, cracks in your foundation walls, or leaky water pipes sometimes is what causes these things, or a leaky roof, whatever it is that's causing the actual moisture to get in the first place, we're going to make sure from a property maintenance standpoint, we can compel the owners to make sure that that gets taken care of, including things like the humidity in your unit. When the AC is running, you need to make sure, the exhaust is running when you're in your shower. Change the filters in the air handling have to be done. That's just typical, sort of ongoing maintenance that should be expected. One thing that I want to point out, that the mold commonly grows in bathtubs, showers, and the frames of windows and whatnot. That's normal sort of stuff. And that's the sort of thing that tenants are basically expected to clean. If you have, slimy mold around your toilet, you just need to clean the toilet. It's not a big deal sort of thing. But that's one of the things those sort of things that would be expected to clean up. Alrighty. Lead paint. Lead paint's a big deal. If your property was constructed prior to 1978, when you apply for a rental license, you have to give us a lead certificate. And basically, there are more or less two ways that you deal with lead. You get it tested, and you find out there's no lead in the property, and you're good to go. So you'll get basically a lead-free certificate from any contractor that you work with. They'll be able to test your property. If they find there's no lead, they will give you a certificate and say your property is lead-free. That's the golden ticket forever. You hold on to that. Lead doesn't come back. Lead doesn't grow back. Lead paint's not made anymore. And even if you had some old lead paint that was left over, I guarantee you it's a big old solid block of whatever it is in a can underneath the back porch. So there is no more lead paint. So that's the good news. The other side is if you have lead, for example, let's say you have a concrete column in your building, and it was painted with several layers of lead paint. Rather than going in there and sealing off the place and negative air pressure and sandblasting and getting rid of it all, you could also take and essentially, let's say, encapsulate that column with drywall so that all the lead is completely encased. So let's say you had something like this. Of course, you would want to get rid of the loose things off of there, but maybe drywall goes over top of it in that scenario. In that case, the lead's still there, but you have a it's been abated, and at that point you have to provide renewal certificates every 2 years. And that full risk reduction is what it's called. That full risk reduction certificate needs to be provided and updated every time the tenants change over, or at least every 2 years. And again, we're just looking for this information. This is actually monitored and overseen by the Maryland Department of the Environment. And again, something else, just a little side note, we found out 1978 is the date. If your property was built prior to that, you need to be concerned with that. If it was built after that, you don't. We actually had a condo apartment building. According to the state taxation records, it said it was built 1982. And they had a water leak. And in the process of opening things up and cleaning things out and whatnot, they not only found lead, they found asbestos. And we're like, how is that even possible? Well, as it turns out, it was actually built in the 1960s. And it was built as a rental apartment complex. In 1982, it was sold as a rental property and converted over to condos and sold as individual condos. And people bought their own individual condo unit instead of renting an individual apartment. According to state taxation records, that property didn't exist until it became a condo in 1982, I think it was, in this particular case. And we found out that that's not necessarily the case. It's when it was built. And if it was built prior to 78, even though it didn't become a condo until 1980, we're still going to be looking for that lead certificate for anybody who might want to get a rental license for their individual condo unit. So hopefully that helps. And maybe we'll have some questions at the end on that. Smoke and carbon monoxide, CO detectors. They're required in every rental property. In an apartment unit, it's pretty straightforward, but let's say in a house, you have to have one on each level, basement, middle floor, top floor, outside of each sleeping area, and inside each individual bedroom. This is one of the requirements in our code, one of the very few requirements in our code, actually, that's actually retroactive. Generally, when you build a property, you build a house or rental or whatever, if it's met code at the time and was legally occupied, and you've maintained it over the years, and we adopt a new code. Let's say it was built at the time when the roof snow load was a 25-pound roof snow load, and the new code that we just adopted, the 2024 code, say, oh, it's a 40-pound roof load. We don't make all the existing houses out in the real world go back and update their roof trusses to be stronger to to hold a 40-pound roof load as opposed to 25. It's all allowed to exist as long as it's still compliant. If you change occupancy from a house to an office or something like that, that's a different case. But as long as it's maintained in the condition that it was originally constructed and approved under, you don't have to go back. We adopt a new code. We don't apply that code back to existing properties. Smoke and CO detectors are the one exception to that. Smoke detectors back in the mid 70s, you had to have one smoke detector in the hallway outside your bedroom, and that's all you needed. Over time, the code has required brand new properties require, again, one on each level, one outside of each sleeping area. And sometimes let's say you have a rancher, you might have bedrooms on both sides of the house. You need a smoke detector outside of both of those sleeping areas, and you need one in each individual bedroom. And what the code says, if you're doing anything that requires a permit, other than like outside stuff like a deck or something like that, you don't need to. But if you're doing any repair or alteration work in the house, in the unit itself, that requires a building permit, you have to retrofit the house to meet the smoke detector requirements as if it were a brand new house. And I'm going to show you why here in a minute. And one of the reasons is that fires don't burn the way they used to. Fires used to be, furniture was a wood frame, metal springs, and cotton bat padding. Right now, it's a rigid, hard plastic frame with foam rubber cushioning and synthetic fabrics covering it all. Another way of saying all that is that couch today is gasoline, right? It's solid petroleum-based product. Whereas in the old days, it was back in the late 70s, even early 80s, it were natural materials. And it's important that you get as early a smoke detection as possible. Now, as you can imagine, if you have a house and you need to add smoke detectors in the bedrooms, especially in the middle floor, it's kind of hard to add those. The new requirements are that every smoke detector has to be hardwired. It has to be hardwired with battery backup, and it has to be interconnected such that if one smoke detector goes off, they all go off. Okay. That's an important aspect, especially again, if you're adding smoke detector in the middle floor of a house, it's hard to get the wiring together so that if the middle floor detector goes off, how is it going to, be wired to make the other ones on the upper floors go off? The technology is improving. There are wireless ways to make that all happen. We will also work with you if you can't have wiring, as we say right here, if you can't do wiring, you can have a sealed long life battery. And essentially, all smoke detectors, if they're more than 10 years old, they need to be replaced. Smoke detectors used to have basically a long, high-pitched beep sort of signal. Smoke detectors today have what's called a code 3 temporal pattern, right? Instead of like a beep, right? It's a beep, 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 right? 3 beeps and a pause, 3 beeps and a pause. Guarantee you, if you have a detector that's doing you press and it gives you a long, steady beep, it's more than 10 years old, and you should replace it because smoke detectors are cheap life insurance. These detectors, the technology is better. They're very inexpensive. They're easy to install. $100 or $200 every 10 years or so is, again, cheap life insurance. One of the things I want to show you here, hopefully I can find it. Here we go. Can you guys see my YouTube screen, Tracy? Yes.
Yep, we can see
Okay,
it.
good. This is a video. It's from an organization called the Underwriters Laboratory Firefighter Safety Research Institute. They're actually located here in Howard County. A friend of mine who went to my alma mater, Dr. Steve Gerber, is the head of that group. And this is a video that essentially shows two side-by-side fires, one in traditional natural fibers versus synthetic fibers. It's about 2.5 minutes long. I'm going to stop it a couple of different times just to explain to you. Flashover is a term that you're going to see here. Flashover basically means that everything in the room is off gassing, and all those gases all at once ignite into flame. The thing you need to know about flashover is nobody lives in a flashover room for more than about 15 seconds at best. All right, so here on your left-hand side is the natural material, and on the right is the synthetic materials, which interestingly enough, flame seems to get bigger on the natural side first, which it really does, but it sort of slows down. And notice the clock as you're looking at it, the clock at the bottom, right? It's sped up, so we're looking at like 2 minutes so far. Pretty big flame in those natural things. But now look at the synthetic, right? Boom. Let me stop real quick. Look at the difference in the smoke that's coming off the natural materials versus the synthetic materials. Much darker, much thicker, and it's much more toxic, actually. The reason smoke detectors in 1975 worked so well is because cigarette in the couch, right? It smolders for hours, right? And you'll see basically what that means. And that smoke will get that smoke detector and give you a warning, let you know there's a fire, so that you have time to get out. Look at the time. Look at the room on the right. I'm going to stop real quick. I want you to look right here at the carpet, right? The carpet is essentially melting and bubbling. People think, oh, I just stuck underneath of this flame here and I'll be okay. This flame up here is basically like a space heater, a really big, angry, ugly space heater. And it's radiating heat down on the floor. It's preheating everything in here. And keep in mind, this chair, this basket, all these things are basically made out of synthetic materials. The carpet itself is made out of synthetic material. It's preheating it, it's off gassing it, and if you were in that room, it's a bad time for you right now. If you were a firefighter in this room, it would be a bad time. and boom, flash over, right? Less than 5 minutes, 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Look at the natural side. It's still going. It's still going. 16 minutes. That's why you need more smoke detectors than you did before. You can't have just the one, the couch is smoldering downstairs. It gets up the hallway. It alerts you. You get, here's the smoke's in the hallway. You have time to get out. That's 30 minutes we're looking at right here. And this room hasn't flashed over yet. And again, look at the difference in the smoke. Okay. That's an important concept. And that's why you need more smoke detectors. That's why, quite honestly, the codes require residential sprinkler systems. Now, I'm not going to show you another video on that, but it could show you a similar room, two modernly furnished rooms, one with residential sprinklers and one without. And the one within like 60 seconds, 90 seconds, the sprinkler head goes off and the fire goes out. Makes a world of difference because things burn differently than they used to back in the 70s and 80s. Alrighty. Carbon monoxide alarms, same situation. Carbon monoxide alarms, if you have any kind of natural fuel burning appliance, you have to have a CO detector. If you have a gas stove, gas furnace, anything that burns gas, wood burning fireplaces, pellet stoves, or anything that's basically, is combustion, you have to have CO detection. And CO detection alarms essentially have to be located essentially the same place smoke detectors do, because the idea is that you want to sense the carbon monoxide threat where you are we're sleeping, so that you have an opportunity to wake up, so that you have an opportunity to escape before things become untenable. Even if you have an all-electric unit or house, right? If you have an attached garage, you need the carbon monoxide detection. If you don't have an attached garage and you have absolutely no wood burning, gas burning, fossil fuel type appliances, you don't need CO detection. But short of that, you would need those. And again, the same companies that manufacture and list smoke detectors, Underwriters Laboratory and ETL, are the same companies that make carbon monoxide detections. And CO detection has come a long way just in the last 10, 15 years. They're much more reliable and less prone to false alarms. And the last slide I got here, some links. If you want to look at this link in the upper right-hand corner here, takes you to Howard County's webpage. I believe I have that. Let me see here real quick. Escape. If you click that link in that upper right-hand corner, it takes you to Howard County Inspection License Permits webpage or Forms and Fees page. If you go to rental housing, you open it up, you've got all of these links. All of these links are there. It also has, let's see here, real quick. What I just showed you there is this QR code here. This QR code in the upper left-hand corner rather, takes you to our checkoff form that you're going to look at. And this is essentially, if you're going to have a rental property and you're applying for a license, it's probably the best and most useful tool that you're going to have to get ready for that initial inspection. We don't want to have to inspect it, find problems, and come back. We want it to be good to go so we can sign you off, get your license issued, and you get up and running. You can get in there as a tenant. You can start renting and collecting rent as a landlord. And again, there's lots of details in what we have in there, but we're looking at smoke alarms, battery-only detectors, electrical detectors, carbon monoxide detection. We're going to look how clean and sanitary the place is. If you have fireplaces, are they being maintained or have they been decommissioned? If you're on well and septic, we're looking at those sort of things. The occupant limitations that I talked about before, I don't know if you can see this too well. There we go, right there. Essentially, for example, how many people can you put in a rental property? Well, basically, if a bedroom, it has to have at least 70 square feet to be considered a bedroom, in addition to rescue window requirements and things of that nature for one person. If you have two or more people, you basically have to have 50 square feet for each person. So if you have two people, it's got to be 100 square feet. Three people, it's got to be 150, and so on. There are minimum square footages for living rooms and dining rooms, for example, and combined living and dining rooms, to give us some guidelines on how much square footage you need for each individual person. Where are we at here? Washer, dryer, water heater, electrical service, your furnaces. Basically, we're looking at all your rooms, the sort of things we'll be looking for when we get there. Your windows, if you have sprinklers, are they being maintained? Stairways, exiting, making sure your property is identified. Street numbers are important to know. We talked about lead paint. Deadbolt. You can't have a double key deadbolt. It's got to be a thumb turn on the inside so that you don't need a key to get out of it. So there's that, and that is basically all I got. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those. And
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now, but please, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll get those answered for you.
It was so comprehensive and so detailed that nobody possibly couldn't understand 100% of everything I just said.
I found that video of the fire to be frightening.
Yeah, and you know what? It should be. Because a lot of people think, oh, it's a smoke detector. Well, first off, I could show a couple other videos. Again, the sprinkler one side by side. Another one that's really good that the Underwriters Firefighter Safety Research Lab also did. It basically they have it's like an oversized mobile home, but it has a living room at one end and a hallway down to the door in. And off of that hallway, there are two bedrooms. There's one bedroom very close to the living room, and there's another bedroom far away from the living room. They light a fire in the living room and they close the door to the bedroom closest to the living room, right? But they leave the door to the bedroom further away from the living room open, right? And they light the fire, and the window on that fire, it does its thing. It breaks and it flashes over, just like you saw in the video I showed you there. Very dramatic, very angry. And then they send the firemen real quick. They knock it down very quickly, and then they lower the wall down so that the people can see what's behind there. And the difference between the room with the door closed versus the room with the door open is literally life and death. Everybody think, and there's the Underwriters Fire Safety Research folks, they have a thing, it's like, close before you doze. So if you're sleeping with your bedroom door open, you should definitely make sure you close it. But the thing why that video should have been so scary to you is that doors closed, you might not get a lot of smoke in there, and you hear the smoke detectors going off. You're going, there's one right in your room. It's like beep, 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 beep. All right, you're gonna get up. Let me put my pants on. Let me find out what's going on there. Let me open the door. Right? No. When you hear that alarm, you need to think about getting everybody out instantly. Right? Don't, just because you may not smell anything or see anything, things change that quickly that you need to respond immediately without delay. You don't have 20, 30 minutes like you did with natural materials. You have maybe 4 minutes. So you need to get out, you need to respond quickly.
All right. I don't see any questions. Usually the one question we get asked is will the slides be available? And if Bob is okay with that, I'm happy to send out
Absolutely
a copy of the slides as well as the recording to everybody who registered. So give us a couple of weeks to make that happen. If you have any questions, obviously afterwards, and you know how to reach Department of Inspections, License and Permits, the rental housing unit is top notch and we work with them all the time. And so I will take this opportunity to tell their boss that they are top notch. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for today's program. And thank you for everybody who attended. And we hope to see you in the upcoming webinars that we have this month. And
I'll see you in a couple of days.
Us.
I'm coming to the car buying training or webinar in 2 days.
Yes,
Yep.
I'm actually looking forward to that one because that is definitely a skill. All right. Thanks, everybody, and good night.